Hello and welcome to the MMA Girl podcast with your host, Jess. This is part 2 of episode 6. As I said to you, I was coming back straight away with a second part for this week's episode because I was away last week, so I didn't get to film my podcast last week. And so I simply thought, why not make a 2-part episode for this week, as I've got so much to talk about. And as I said in my last episode, I am currently in the UK because I've come down for UFC London, which happened a few days ago now. So today's part 2 of episode 6, we're going down the rabbit hole of UFC London and all things UFC London. So I'm going to be doing a separate vlog with everything that happened to me during UFC London, who I met, etc. But this episode, we're going to be focusing on what happened at UFC London and what the UFC fan experience is like when you go to an event like that. So yeah, let's get going. So, I had the privilege of being in the UK for UFC London's fight night on Saturday night. And honestly, I had an amazing time. I really won't lie. Obviously, the card did not deliver what people wanted it to deliver in terms of the action-packed fight card that they were hoping for. But the whole fan experience that I had and the overall event and the prelims, meeting the fighters, the meet and greets, the watch parties, the experience in the O2, everything was just, fabulous. And I must say thank you to the O2 because you'll see that in my video dedicated to UFC London when it comes out. But I was not originally seated somewhere where I would be able to see the fights up close. I had really bad seating. I got my tickets. Despite getting them as early as I possibly could, I wasn't able to get really, really good tickets. I went for something a lot higher up in the seating area, and I was very disappointed when I got to the O2 to see where I was seated. And I just had to wait until 7 p.m. and they upgraded me to the Pepsi VIP booth in the O2 Arena. And I was gobsmacked. I didn't think that was even possible. I've only been to UFC Paris events so far. I've been to all 3 UFC Parises, and I've never been able to upgrade my seats. Luckily for me, the 3 UFC Paris events that I did attend, I had some really good seats, so I'm really not one to complain about that, and I really was able to see the fights up close and personal. But at UFC Paris, there was no way of changing seats or upgrading because it was sold out for months and months and months. This event in the O2 for UFC London was not sold out. Let's just, get that out of the way. It was not sold out. Sean Brady versus Leon Edwards didn't sell, at least in terms of tickets, didn't sell as well as an Alex Pereira Ankalaev or a John Jones Stipe Miocic or even a Tom Aspinall card. That being said, I won't take anything away from the fighters that were in attendance at UFC London this year. Let's not take anything away from those guys because they gave it their all. A lot of decisions, obviously, throughout the prelims and the main card, but some great moments that we didn't expect to see and some moments we did expect to see, including, of course, Leon Edwards losing in front of the London crowd to Sean Brady via submission in the 3rd round. I didn't get a chance to do my predictions last week for this fight card, but I wasn't surprised that Sean Brady won that fight. I honestly wasn't. He's a madman. He's a crazy guy on the ground, and he just did that much better than Ballard did with Leon to break him down and make him lose all his confidence. And I think we'll get onto that later. Of course, we're going to go through the whole card, but I think for Leon, he needs to ask himself a lot of questions. Maybe switch up his coaching style, not necessarily change coaches, but add another grappling or jiu-jitsu coach into his coaching team, because he seems to be just so overwhelmed when someone takes him down and he's not able to get back up on the feet. So let's talk about that later anyway. Let's go back into the prelims and the experience overall. I went to the ceremony weigh-ins the day before. You'll be seeing that on my vlog. They were great. Michael Bisping hosted the Q&A with Paddy Pimblett and Michael Venom Page, whom I'd met an hour or 2 beforehand because Michael Venom Page did the meet and greet at the UFC WWE store in the O2 Arena. So check out my vlog for any of those pictures or videos from that. I got to ask Paddy Pimblett and Michael Venom Page a question on the microphone, so you'll be able to see me asking those questions on my vlog. But overall, the Q&A was really fun, really entertaining and informative. Both guys had a lot to say. both had a lot of questions from the fans coming in, so it was really nice to see. And even people asked Mike Bisping quite a few questions. And of course, the man of the hour, Tom Aspinall, came up. His name is always brought up. So honestly, when you're in London and when you're in the UK, or when you're talking to Michael Bisping or any UFC fighter from the UK, Tom's name is now brought up all the time, regardless. So that was not a surprise to me. So yeah, the UFC Q&A was great. The ceremony weigh-ins were great, always just as entertaining as usual. The ceremony weigh-ins are some of my favourite parts of being part of the UFC experience. If you guys ever get to go to a UFC show, I really recommend, and I say this to everyone that I meet outside of the arenas, or any guys that I come across and talk to about going to events, I'm like, go to the ceremony weigh-ins. It's part of the experience. It's free, first come first serve. Even if you've not got tickets to the event, go to the weigh-ins, because it's just a way to be involved, a way to get to see the fighters up close. And as I said, there are often UFC fighter Q&As just before the ceremony weigh-ins, so you get an hour to either ask questions to fighters or watch other fans ask questions and see the fighters up close and personal. So it's a really good experience. And if you're willing to put in a bit of extra money, you can get the pack UFC experience, where you have the VIP access to the ceremony weigh-in. So you get closer than the people that come in for free to the UFC weigh-ins and Q&As. You get I think a few goodies. You get priority seats, etc., in the arena for the event and for the weigh-in. So it's probably worth it if you're a big fan like myself. And it's something I'm going to look into doing next time I'm going to an event. So probably my next event will be UFC Paris, as I usually do every year. And yeah, so the weigh-ins were great. And as I said, they're one of my favorite parts of the UFC experience. So do not miss the weigh-ins if you can't help it. Book your flights if you're going to a different country for a UFC event. Book them in advance and take 2 days, the Friday and the Saturday, to appreciate the UFC fan experience as I did this time around. Let's get into the prelims, guys. So the first prelim out of the jump was the fight between Kutadadze versus Fernandez. And I don't know if you guys saw at the prelims, he had a real team behind him. Guram had not only the Tuporia brothers, so Alexander Tuporia and Ilya Tuporia with him, but he also had none other than Khamzat Chimaev with him. They were the three corners of Guram this time around. And even with an elite corner like that, he unfortunately lost his fight against Fernandez. But Fernandez was a lot more heavy hitting. He dominated that fight from start to finish, and it was a well-deserved unanimous decision from Fernandez. So there's nothing really to say. A corner like that does not mean you're going to win. When you come to a fight with a corner like that, people expect you to win. That's not like him to underperform like that, so I'm not sure really what's going on. But good job to Hernandez for getting that win. I'm not going to go over too many prelim fights because a lot of them were decisions. I wanted to go through, however, the fight between Shauna Bannon and Pooja Tomar. Pooja Tomar being the only current active Indian woman on the UFC roster, as far as I know. And Shauna being one of our Irish girls who is so nice. She's the most, heartwarming person. She, has a really nice story to her as well. She is a single mom fighting to win bonuses and just win money for her son, and raising her child on her own. It's not an easy task being a UFC fighter, because just being an MMA fighter in general, and training every day, twice a day, whilst being a mother, is not an easy task. She's a really gritty fighter, and she came through the trenches because she almost got submitted herself, and she almost got knocked down and knocked out herself. I think within the first 3 minutes of the fight, Tomar scored a knockdown that everyone thought would be the end of the fight. But Shauna came through and got the win in the second round, just over 3 minutes before the end of the second round. She got a submission win, which was beautifully done, and rightfully she got a $50,000 bonus from the UFC after her victory. So I'm really happy for her. She said on the mic, "I hope I get the 50,000 bonus," and There was no doubt about it. So a great fight, and a lot of people are now saying, I'm a fan of Shauna, I'm a fan of Shauna Bannon. And I'm a fan of Shauna Bannon, and I have been for a while, but now she's starting to show us what she's really made of and why she deserves her spot in the UFC. So I'm hopefully going to see her very soon in a main card and just, more often on the UFC fight cards in the future. So it's a great fight. Another notable fight on the prelims was, of course, Tybura versus Mick Parkin, a heavyweight bout. Mick coming in with no defeats and 10 victories, and Tybura obviously at 26 victories and 9 defeats before coming into this fight. Now, I met Mick Parkin at the UFC hotel. He was the most lovely person I've ever met. He was so, he has such a nice smile. He's so, approachable. He was so kind. He signed my UFC cap. I just loved seeing him. And obviously, as you guys know, he trains with Tom Aspinall. He's from the same gym as Tom Aspinall, which is another reason why Tom Aspinall was present on Saturday night. But unfortunately, he didn't get the win. It was a sluggish, hard to watch fight from both guys. I think that it was close, but the judges scored it by unanimous decision for Tybura. It was a deserved win from Tybura. Tybura came in and he got his win, so people from his country are very happy. So we'll see what's next for Mick in the future. He's only got 1 defeat on his record for now, so nothing to be so shocked about or upset about. He'll come back strong. He fights with the best. He trains with the best. As you know, he's training with this current interim heavyweight champion Tom Aspinall, so I'm not worried about him. He just knows now that he has a few things to improve on when fighting more skilled opponents, because I think this was his biggest challenge yet. So good for Tybura to get the victory, Tybura to get the victory. Mick going back to the drawing board with a few of his skills that he needs to work on. That's it. So, side note on Chris Padilla, he was on the featured prelim against Jay Herbert. Jay Herbert I also met at the UFC hotel on Friday morning. Jay Herbert, such a nice guy. Unfortunately, he lost his fight against Padilla. Padilla had the most nasty cut on his face, just over the eye. I just didn't expect, with all that damage, that he would get the victory, but he did. That was just a side note. Because that fight was just insanely boring. I'm sorry to say that, but for the first two rounds, they literally didn't touch each other. I've never seen a fight with that little action in the first and second rounds. And every time the bell was rung for the last 10 seconds of the round, they would pick up pace a little bit, and then obviously 10 seconds later the round would be finished. The third round obviously was a little bit more intense, but overall the fight was just insanely boring. I just couldn't believe it. But anyway, let's go on to the main card, guys. I came down from France, obviously, so I was with an entourage who were looking to support the French Parisian fighter Morgan Charrier, who unfortunately lost against London-owned Nathaniel Wood. Nathaniel Wood, a really humble guy, really nice. I met Nathaniel when I was coming out the O2. No, after the weigh-ins, he was just in the tube. He was just in the tube station in a corner. I turned around and I saw a guy with a cap on and a hood on, and I was like, is that Nathaniel Wood? I went a little bit closer, saw that it was him, and I asked him to sign my t-shirt. You'll be seeing that in my UFC London video. So nice, really so nice. So honestly, I don't know what to say. He dominated Morgan Charrier. You could tell Morgan was looking to not get knocked out. I think his main objective in that fight was to not get knocked out, because Nathaniel Wood he wasn't going to let any of his opponents slip anymore. So I think Morgan took that more than seriously and more than to heart, because he was really scared to get knocked out at that point. So unfortunately, he was working on defense rather than attack, and Nathaniel Wood was on the attack. So Morgan Charrier missed out on that one. I spoke to a few of the guys that work on the French media, MMA media, that were down at the hotel with me. And they said to me, Morgan, we spoke to him yesterday, Morgan blocked himself from all kind of outside interference. Morgan does not want to talk to people. Morgan feels like he needs to just isolate himself. And he did an interview a couple of weeks ago and said that he felt like the French public were way too harsh with him, and that for any fighter that comes out of France. When you win, the French public are behind you 100%. But when you lose, you get all the critics and all the insults you could ever imagine. And I'm not going to say that's false because I've witnessed it myself living in France. I can see how the French public are very fickle. When you lose, especially, for example, when Cyril Gane lost against John Jones, Cyril said, I was even considering stopping MMA, even though it's my life and even though I love the sport and it's my career, people in the street would insult me for the fact that I got submitted by John Jones so easily and so quickly. And I think that Morgan Sharia was so scared of being mocked because he might have got knocked out by Nathaniel Wood, that he was scared to try different things and counterattack Nathaniel Wood. So unfortunately, due to his fear of being knocked out, we got a fight that was not that impressive from his end, and he got the loss against Nathaniel. So a well-deserved win for Nathaniel Wood. Morgan Sharia, he tweeted that he'll be coming back stronger than ever next time, so I hope he gets better. He'll come back better next time and maybe come back for UFC Paris in September. Next up, we had the Scottish, the problem, Chris Duncan versus Jordan Vucinic. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I'm sorry, Jordan. I met Jordan at the hotel on Friday and I met Chris Duncan on Saturday. Chris Duncan kindly signed my UFC London t-shirt and Jordan signed my cap. Both were really nice guys. Duncan got the submission win. It could have gone either way because both guys tried to submit each other and both guys tried to knock each other out before Duncan won by submission, and that submission was incredible. Jordan couldn't get out of it, and the problem, Chris Duncan was the more skilled and dominant fighter on the ground Saturday night. So a well-deserved victory for Chris Duncan, and thanks for signing my t-shirt. He's a Scotsman and my dad's Scottish, so I said to him, my dad and my grandmother are Scottish. You're a real inspiration to me, and he was very nice to take the time to sign my t-shirt and have a little chat with me. So really good to see some good sportsmanship from both of them, and both guys very, very nice. Now I think you guys can't have forgotten what happened on Saturday night between the newcomer Alexia Tianara, the Brazilian girl who came in at 1 week and a half short notice against Molly Meatball McCann. Molly Meatball McCann got submitted within, 4 minutes of the first round. It was really sad to see because during the fighters Q&A on Friday, Paddy couldn't wait to sing her praises. They're teammates above all, but they obviously love and appreciate and adore each other, and he was confident to see her coming into this fight in the best shape of her life. This time around, Paddy said that the cut for this camp was a lot easier. She got to strawweight really easily, and he was really confident that she'd win. So as you guys saw, she took the mic at the end of the fight and said, I can't continue to string you guys along as my fans, asking you to come and see me fight, when a girl that was, not aware that we were going to fight even 2 weeks ago and came in at 1 week and a half's notice to come and fight me and submits me in the first round. I can't give you that. That doesn't suffice for Dana White. It's not sufficient for the fight fans, and it's not sufficient for herself. So she unfortunately took off her gloves and retired during UFC London. It was really hard to see someone retire. It's the first time I've seen someone retire in the flesh. I'm a real crybaby, so whenever I watch someone retire, whether it was Korean Zombie or anyone that retired whilst we were watching fights at home, I was bawling my eyes out. But being in front of her and seeing her retire in front of my very eyes was even harder to see, even harder to hear. But Molly couldn't have been a better sportswoman, honestly. The way she spoke about it, the way she admitted, that's just not good enough. So she admitted that it just wasn't her time and she needed to leave, the spotlight to the newbies and people that were better than her. And she will be staying around the UFC fighters. I think she'll be helping out her fellow MMA fighters at the UFC and in her gym, and obviously accompanying Paddy Pimblett wherever he goes. Very humble, very honest, and thank you so much, Molly. As we said whilst we were in the arena, thank you, Molly. I screamed out with, the top of my lungs, "Thank you, Molly, for all you've done for women's MMA." She was, and we can't forget this, the first British woman to win a fight at the UFC. So that's enormous. That's huge. Let's not forget her. She'll go down in the history books anyway, in the MMA history books, and she has a huge fan base that love her very dearly, so she will not be forgotten. Thank you, Molly. Thank you very much once again. Gunnar Nelson versus Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland, another fighter that I met at the UFC Hilton Hotel on the Friday, I think, the 21st of March. And what a turnaround for Kevin, because he got knocked down a few times. Gunnar Nelson tried a few submission attempts. Kevin was just, hanging in there with his thumb up saying, "I'm good." He's trying to submit me, "I'm good." Obviously, there was that moment when Gunnar Nelson had him in a leg lock around his arm or something like that, and he was holding him up with all of his weight. And Kevin was just like, hanging in there. And he said, I was asking him how he was doing. He said, I asked him how the F he's doing. I don't know how that's even possible to be in that position in a fight where you can ask your opponent how you're doing whilst holding onto their arm in midair. But, the fight game was just so unexpected. So it was just a great fight to see, very entertaining. Well done to Kevin for turning the fight around and getting the victory. He almost won by KO or TKO in the first round going into the second. Gunnar Nelson was saved by the bell, honestly. Within a couple seconds, Gunnar Nelson would have been knocked out, or, that would have been a TKO and the ref would have stopped the fight. So he got lucky. He really did. So a well-deserved victory for Kevin Holland and a great, entertaining fight from both of them. Let's hop on the Carlos Ulberg hype train, guys, because if you weren't on it before, get on now. The train's about to leave the station, guys. A really close fight between Carlos Ulberg and Jan Blachowicz. Honestly, wasn't expecting it to be that close. I thought Carlos honestly would have dominated a little bit more, but still it was a dominant performance from Carlos Ulberg. Let me have a look at the stats from that fight. So Carlos got 75 significant strikes, with Jan Blachowicz getting 59. No submission attempts from either of them, no knockdowns from either of them. So both guys stayed on the feet, purely striking, purely boxing in this fight. Great fight between the two of them. Carlos now with an 8-fight win streak at the UFC currently. He is the 5th fighter with the longest active win streak in the UFC currently, and in his like heavyweight division, he is one of the holders of the longest win streak in UFC history currently as an active fighter. So honestly, Carlos, I can't wait to see the next fight. What's next for Carlos Ulberg, we don't know. But a well-deserved victory for Carlos Ulberg, and I can't wait to see what he has next. Let's get into the main event of the evening, Leon Edwards versus Sean Brady. And the welterweight division is full of talent and should not be slept on. I've already said that. But Leon Edwards, what is going on? We don't know. Leon looked like a fragment of his former self. This is not the same Leon Edwards we saw against Kamaru Usman in the first fight or in the second fight. Since he lost his belt, he has lost his spark. And you could tell, I saw Leon coming out of the fighter hotel on Saturday. He didn't take any photos with any fans. He didn't really talk to anyone much. He looked very in the zone, very serious, because he knew that this fight was really important to him. Coming into this fight, it was a win or die kind of situation for Leon. If he lost this fight against Sean Brady, which he has, obviously, he's going to lose his #1 ranking in the welterweight division. Sean Brady, as of now, is #1 ranked welterweight contender in the world. Probably going to get a title shot after Jack Della Maddalena gets his title shot against Belal in Montreal. At Montreal, what will happen determines who Sean Brady's opponent will be, and that's about it. Leon Edwards, coming into this fight, looked defeated before even fighting Sean Brady, and what Sean did in the cage to Leon Edwards what Bilal Muhammad should have done to Leon Edwards, honestly. Sean took him down, kept him on the floor the whole time. The fans were booing from start to finish, of course, because they didn't want to see Leon on the floor. For the fans, they don't like seeing guys being taken down and staying on the floor that long. But Sean Brady took him down for the whole fight. 3 whole rounds of takedowns, of submission attempts, of Leon looking overwhelmed and not knowing what to do. He looked defeated. He looked upset. And when they were on the feet, even Sean Brady was able to get more strikes in than Leon Edwards was even able to get. I think, let's look at the stats, but I think Sean Brady got in, 221 strikes and 57 significant strikes, compared to Leon Edwards' 23 strikes and 23 significant strikes. So in terms of his accuracy, Leon Edwards is obviously the better boxer between the two of them, but he just wasn't there. He wasn't getting enough strikes in, and then when he was taken down every time, he couldn't get out of it. And Sean Brady with the submission victory in the fourth round, just over a minute after the bell rang for the fourth round. And a well-deserved win for Sean Brady. Amazing fight on his hand. Sean mentioned after the fight that he was disappointed with Leon's attitude coming into this fight. He tried to show Leon Edwards the kind of respect that a former welterweight champion deserves. And Sean was saying on Ariel Helwani's show that he wasn't at all impressed with Leon or his team and how they were treating him. He was very disrespectful, allegedly, and didn't seem to respect Sean Brady at all. I think that Leon feels a little hard done by, maybe because he was put against two heavy grapplers in a row and didn't want to deal with that. He was obviously very happy before the fight was altered to be against a Jack Della Maddalena who is a pure striker as well. He said, "I'm so relieved. I'm going to be able to show you guys my boxing skills." But unfortunately, that just didn't happen. Jack Della Maddalena was, pushed to the head of the queue, and he's getting his title shot in Montreal against Bilal. And so Sean Brady had replaced Jack Della Maddalena in a heartbeat and got that W, and a well-deserved W in that. So that's all I have to say for that. A little bit disappointed in the UK fans, however, because I know the situation with the tube is crazy. I'm going to explain that more in my video about UFC London, my breakdown of the whole event. But just to say, when Leon lost by submission, even before the fight finished, fans were already leaving. It looked like a football match when your team was losing. If they were losing 3-1, for example, you'd leave before the match finished. I saw so many people leaving, even at the end of the second round. And when Sean submitted Leon Edwards, nobody even waited for the hand raises. Nobody even waited for Sean to be announced the winner of that fight before leaving. I have to say the arena was so empty when Sean's hand was raised. But Sean, great victory for him. But Leon's going to come back stronger. I'm very sure of it. He just needs to look at what's next for him. Maybe get some new grappling coaches in and work on his grappling, work on his ground game, and see what he can come up with next time he fights in the octagon at UFC. So what is next for all of these fighters after UFC London? Let's go through a few of these fighters and see what could be next for them. Alexia Tianara, who won obviously the fight by submission against Molly McCann. An insane fight. So I think she, in the strawweight division, should be already matched up to a ranked opponent, honestly. I don't know who the UFC are going to come out with for Alexia, but she needs a ranked opponent next. Kevin Holland in the welterweight division, I think he should be in the middleweight division, sorry. In the middleweight division, there are a lot of choices for Kevin Holland, but I think a nice fight for him and a nice way to obviously bring back this fighter is Paulo Costa. I can't wait to see Paulo come back to the UFC. I see he's doing quite a few things on the outside of the cage, but he looks like he's ready to get back in there. And Kevin, being the active fighter that he is, might come back in a couple months and say, why not, if there's a fight offered to him against Paulo Costa. And I'd love to see that fight. For Carlos Ulberg, he was saying that the next fight he wants is Ankalaev or Alex Pereira. And why not a fight against the winner of Khalil Roundtree versus Jamal Hill? So I think that we should see a fight against Khalil Roundtree and Carlos Ulberg if Khalil wins his fight against Jamal Hill. And if he doesn't win his fight against Jamal Hill, maybe we should see Carlos Ulberg fight Jamal Hill. That would be amazing. So the winner of Jamal Hill versus Khalil Roundtree, I would put against Carlos Ulberg. Then for Leon Edwards in the welterweight division, honestly, I'd like to see him come up against a Ian Machado Gary, or someone who will stay on the feet a bit more. If Jack Della Maddalena loses his fight against Bilal, why not put Jack Donnell and Madalena in a fight against Leon Edwards and see what that would have happened between the two of them in their next fight? And as for the winner of this fight, Sean Brady, the only natural conclusion would be to put him against Bilal Muhammad. That's what I'm saying. So next fight we can see, or maybe a Shavkat versus Sean Brady to see who's the number one contender for the next fight. You know, who knows? But there are my predictions for the next fights that are going to be coming up. And that is it for my coverage of the UFC London card. If you guys want to watch my UFC London review and recap video, that's coming out soon. And my UFC London vlog is also coming out very soon too. So keep an eye out for that and stay tuned. Let's move on to UFC Mexico and go over the main card and see what my predictions are for that fight card. Here are my predictions for this Saturday's UFC Mexico City card. Moreno versus Erceg. Starting off with Ronaldo Rodriguez versus Kevin Borjas. I'm going to go for Ronaldo Rodriguez via TKO in the second or third round for this fight. David Martinez versus Simon Oliveira. I'm going to go for Simon Oliveira. Simon Oliveira is going to get the submission win, or by TKO, ground and pound. He's coming off with 2 losses, so I think he's going to want to get back into the wins column. So I'm going to say Simon Oliveira by submission or TKO in the second or third round. Next up, we have Raul José Jr. versus Vincent Morales. This is going to come as no surprise to anyone when I say I think Raul Rosas Jr. is going to get the victory in this fight via KO in the first or second round. He's on a tear right now with only 1 defeat to his 10 victories, and I don't think there's anything stopping him right now. So Rojas, let's go. Next, we have the legend and veteran in the fight game, Kevin Gastelum versus Joe Pyfer. I think the age is going to get to Gastelum in this fight, and he's going to gas out. Unfortunately, little play on words. Sorry, guys. Joe Pyfer, I think he'll get the victory via KO in the second or third round, probably in the second. For the co-main event, we have Manuel Torres versus Drew Dober. Drew Dober, we last saw him, most importantly, against Jean Silva, where he got the nasty gash on his eye. That was obviously the result of a lot of insane striking from Jean Silva that ended in a third round victory by TKO for Jean Silva via doctor stoppage. I think Duba is a hard-warned, very tough man, and I think he's going to get the victory over Manuel Torres via decision. And for the main event of UFC Mexico's main card, we have Brandon Moreno versus Steve Erceg. Steve Erceg coming out of Australia, Brandon Moreno coming out of obviously Mexico. I don't see Brandon Moreno losing this fight. I know that Steve Erceg is making his way up the flyweight division little by little, and he's on a tear right now. He last was seen losing against the one and only Pantoja in his title fight, whilst he was number 7 ranked in the flyweight division, seeing as he was not number 1 contender at all when he got his fight against Pantoja. So, bravo to Steve Erceg. He gave his all, and Pantoja was just that much better. I just don't see him defeating Brandon Moreno, who's coming off a victory in his last fight. Brandon Moreno, I think he'll win by submission or decision in this fight. This fight is obviously 5 rounds. A lot of the time, 5 rounders go the distance in this type of fight, and I think Brandon Moreno will get the decision win, or he might get the submission in there. So that's my prediction for the main event of UFC Mexico happening this Saturday. And I can't wait to see this fight. I can't wait to see the fight card. The whole card looks great. So UFC, thank you for going to Mexico and letting us discover some new talent that's coming in from all across the world. So yeah, I can't wait to see that. Thank you very much for listening to this second part of my episode 6 of my podcast. And as I said, stay tuned for my UFC London vlog and reviews. Thank you so much for listening, and have a nice day and have a nice weekend and have a nice fight week. See you next time.